Now, I add to that some of the things about population dynamics to share with you as well. As a whole, Missouri was on the road from rural to urban. We've been continue that pattern. Now we're seeing more, some would say, urban sprawl or the ex-urban pattern. It's urban people who like to live in rural areas. You want to live in the country and get on your lawn tractor and mow 10 acres. I'm a farmer. Do that kind of experience. But I want to make sure that I'm within 20 minutes of Walmart. It's that being urban yet being in a rural setting that causes in part. But it's linked to the transportation corridors and our, again, as has been mentioned earlier, our commitment to the internal combustion engine which one person can drive. It's like having a team of horses. Now we use horsepower instead. I'm in control of this huge manufactured machine. And that's a symbol, again, of all kinds of strength and sexuality and those kind of things we don't want to get into. But the corridors that we've made for the automobile, when you think about the number of square miles that are dedicated to the automobile, parking lots, drive-throughs, we build houses to put our cars in. Those kind of things, and monolithic parking structures and car lots to sell automobiles, and on and on and on and on and on. We probably have dedicated more land to automobiles than any other entity. And the corridors for Missouri are becoming wider and wider and wider as we go. And I think that's one of the trends that we'll continue to see. The resources and trade networks have been changing, but they're still very significant. Missouri still sees itself as a trade link for the rest of the world. For us, it's been a tremendous shift in the small town viability to only now small towns who have network possibilities. We built originally with European settlement a town about every 5 miles. So therefore you could get to town back in a day if you needed to. Then that kept going further. Now it's 35 to 50 miles between towns that have viability. And they probably need to be on a major transportation corridor to survive, which means it's the linkage, again, to the outer world. We are seeing in Missouri tremendous ethnic diversity. It's different diversity than what we saw in the 1700s and the 1800s, but it's an ethnic diversity. Again, reminder, Missouri is in the middle, so we see those kinds of changes. Just a few things on growth. Here are things that you know from the 2000 census. Missouri had slipped from rank of 15th down to 17th with the 2000 census from 1990. The counties that were the largest in population. Some of these trends will extend into the next decades, particularly if we look at growth. Our growth rate prior in the 20th century had been about 9%. That's probably going to slow down to about 6%. They're projecting over the next several decades. Surprisingly, perhaps to some, but it's the Ozarks that are beginning now to see population growth as the northern sets of counties, agricultural-based counties, begin to shrink. Amenities, but I would suggest also the natural environment is an appeal, mixed with the built environment of lakes in particular, and facilities to take care of recreation and retirement. But also we're seeing shifts in metropolitan areas. For the most part, it's not the inner cities that are growing. In fact, the inner cities are shrinking, but the tiers of counties around the urban areas is where the highest growth is. It was the last part of the 20th century, and it will continue. So when you look at those counties around them, you will see them continuing to grow at rates probably in the neighborhood of 12%. Now, the counties that have been growing at tremendous rates, and you'll notice there, look at Branson West, that community, how it's grown. You're probably going to see some leveling off of that, but I would suggest to you that the southern part of the state, particularly those that are associated with lakes and developed recreation, will continue to grow, also retirement, and again, the counties around. Just the outside of St. Louis and outside of Kansas City and Springfield will continue to grow in population. I won't share with you all of those statistics, but projections are that probably over the next 25 years, we're going to go up pretty close to 7 million. I think our growth rate again is going to probably hit more about 5 to 6%, not be quite as steep as it was most recently, more like it was in mid-20th century. But the where population is located will have some effect on it. So the trends may be we're going to get population density corridors, and I suspect this is going to be creating islands of less human occupied areas, whether those islands are parks within urban areas or the larger expanses that are located in either the prairies or in the Ozarks. But we're going to get this kind of island effect as population intensifies around the urban areas and along major transportation corridors. I mean, we'll see probably the state cut in half with intensity of urban development all along I-70. And so think about what that means for wildlife and, again, other species movements as we create very intense urban corridors and chopping up these other areas into smaller islands. Missouri's percent of change has been lower than the rest of the country, and that probably will be the case in the future. The lowest decade in the 20th century was the 1980s, so we're probably going to come back more to that kind of growth pattern in the next ones. Decline in the most northern agricultural states, movement away from city centers to outlying areas, those trends and patterns I think will continue. Come to me. Yeah, I already talked about that. Here were counties with over 20% growth, and you're probably going to see similar kinds of patterns with the same kind of counties. But again, you'll notice they tend to be smaller cities or the outside counties around. Now, changes in diversity. We see in the 2000 census, Black African American running just under 12%. That's probably going to have a slow increase due to natural increase, not in migration. Hispanic population has been growing tremendously. It's probably going to peak again. We're not going to see as much in migration as we have. But that's been a very interesting phenomena as to where Spanish-speaking population are going. Not the cities necessarily, but to places of agricultural production, either food production or confined animal feeding operations or that kind of labor, intensive labor. Now here in Columbia, you might not see visibly Spanish-speaking population because they'll be in the restaurants and the motels and the service industries, so we'll see them scattered. But that probably is going to be increasing more by natural than in migration. Other components that are going to shift and change us, let me hurry through those. Some counties have grown by out-migration, have decreased by out-migration or grown by in-migration. And again, when you start seeing the counties have both out-migration and natural decrease, it tends to be counties that have more heavily depended on extractive industries and have had nothing to replace them. Other issues that may affect our relationship with the land may have to do with who becomes minority. Has to do again with probably lowering median household incomes, if not poverty. And one of the issues that we'll have with the experience of the outdoors, and I think was being alluded to by previous research too, is that those who can afford to have the outdoor recreation will be the ones who will get it. And it may not be, you just don't go down to the creek or over to the park. And I think this was said also that the world of the outdoors shrinks the poorer you are. And that wasn't the case in previous generations when rural poverty allowed you access to the outdoors, but urban poverty does not do the same.